The economic and financial crisis is spinning out of control, affecting all people in developed and developing countries, especially the young. They worry about their future in today's world. Intelligent, enthusiastic, and ready to contribute to society. Their dreams and hopes are crushed. According to the International Labour Organization, ILO, some 81 million young people are unemployed. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Millions more are underemployed, working in unsafe and unhealthy conditions, often in the informal sector. As the number of jobless and unsatisfied workers grow, political turmoil and unrest is setting in, a phenomenon that is challenging peace and security in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and North America. How can the international community, private sector, and foundations come together in partnership to find solutions that create jobs and decent work for our youth?
Good morning and welcome to our viewers around the world. This is the United Nations face-to-face video conversations, an in-depth discussion with international experts on critical economic and social issues. I am Kevin Cassidy from the International Labour Organization, and I'm happy to present to you today two of our experts to speak on economic and social issues. Today's conversations are coinciding with the Economic and Social Council's panel discussion on providing more and better jobs for young people. I would like to show a video first of Jobs in Crisis before we get to our panelists. We'll be back with you in just a moment. Welcome to the United Nations face-to-face video conversations. Today we will have 5 dialogues. We will be focusing on the issue of youth employment and its importance to economic and social development. Today, for our first dialogue, I am joined by Sharan Burrow, the General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation, which represents 175 million workers in 151 countries.
Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning. And Ronnie Goldberg, who is the Executive Vice President and Senior Policy Officer for the United Nations Council for International Business, which is an active membership of over 300 multinational companies and law firms and business associations.
Good morning.
Welcome. Our topic today in this panel will be innovations in promoting youth employment. As we've seen from the recent crises, first the financial, looking at economic, and now the sovereign debt crisis, severe unemployment has really placed jobs at the center of the international and national policy discussions. The ILO has stated in its recent global employment trends that we now stand at around 200 million unemployed, with an increase of 27 million since the start of the crises. Of that, 40% of the unemployed, about 75 million, are youth aged 15 to 24. Today, young people are 3 times more likely to be unemployed and find particular hardships in finding work. We've seen the expressions of youth in the Arab Spring, when in fact gainful employment is not available, and the concern that we have is on the social fabric and social cohesion in society. My first question will go to Ms. Goldberg. Why is youth unemployment important to business today?
Well, Kevin, you mentioned it just now. First of all, social cohesion is important to business. Business thrives in stable situations where there is a social compact, where communities can thrive, and they can't where there's a great deal of turmoil and unrest. Secondly, I think it's important to remember that business people are people too. We have children, we have stakes in the community. It's important to us that young people have aspirations, that they be able to fulfill their aspirations, and that they have and see a future. That's not just for our families and our communities, but for our society as a whole. But there are important business reasons for being concerned about youth employment and youth unemployment. And those have to do with the fact that young people are the workforce of the future. That's where businesses will get their creativity, their innovation, their ideas, their energy, their employees, not to mention the consumers of the future. So it's very important that we have both prosperous communities and that we have stable communities with where young people feel they have a future and a stake.
Very good. Sharan, I wonder if you can speak a bit about the importance of youth employment to the trade unions around the world.
Well, you said it and Ronnie elaborated. The scale and the urgency of this problem must be tackled. Not only have we got the bitter crisis of unemployment that you described, Kevin, but we've got 45 million young people every year for the next decade entering labour markets that fundamentally can't accommodate them. It's not a north-south divide. Some of the highest percentages of unemployment are now throughout Europe. We actually need to see job creation. We need to see the active labour market programs that help young people from school or university or vocational training into work. And we need to see an ongoing approach to securing those jobs for young people with both skills and opportunities. It is absolutely critical to kickstart growth that people are put back to work. And our young people are absolutely part of that mix. Otherwise, the social and economic time bomb that both you and Ronnie referred to is just around the corner. We already see the tension in North Africa. We've seen it in countries like Yemen. You can't have 30, 40, 50, 60% of young people unemployed and pretend that you can construct an environment for sustainable business, secure jobs, opportunities for our children and grandchildren, or simply the basis, as Ronnie says, of doing business.
Sharan, picking up on that point about the frustration that young people are feeling today, people are starting to feel that they don't have options, that they are stuck in low-paid or informal economy jobs. What specifically can the trade unions do to help youth transition to the workforce, and what role do the youth have in the trade union movement today?
Well, we've called for a global jobs pact, a commitment particularly from the G20 to work not just in its own member states but indeed across the globe to drive a global jobs pact for young people, a youth employment pact that will see young people either in education and or training and or work, so that the mix of skills development, the guarantee of real work, not the kind of schemes that young people are telling us that are just insulting and a dead end. That is schemes where they're put into internships, not as part of their training, which is appropriate, but indeed post-training without pay, where governments are actually offering subsidies to take people on almost as charity in the younger age group. That's not what we need. We need real jobs. We need to work in partnership with business, and I'm delighted to say that we are developing a global joint statement between the IOE and the ITUC. We will promote that through the G20, through the UN system, and particularly in the lead up to the ILO discussion in June. I might add, in 2005, it was a partnership between employers and workers with government agreement that put conclusions about youth employment as a priority on the table of the ILO. We need more action around these questions. Urgent action. The scale and the urgency is just right in front of our faces.
You mentioned about the idea of skills and education and preparing for the workforce for the future. To get into the mind of businesses today, are the educational institutions preparing young people for the 21st century skills that are needed for today's business?
I think that's the number one concern of business, certainly of my member companies, which tend to be multinational companies. They're concerned that the basic education system is not preparing students well enough in terms of the literacy and numeracy and computing skills, that the foundation skills and knowledge that are needed are not there, and that we don't have enough of a preparation for whatever the skills of the 21st century will be. Now, having said that, one thing we've learned recently, or one thing that's come home to us recently, is that we're not very good at predicting what the skills or the jobs of the future are going to be. The pace of technological change, the pace of change in the information society has been enormous. And so what we need to be able to do is separate out what are the core competencies that will allow people to continue to learn and to reaffirm and to reestablish skills over the course of their lifetime. It's not going to be a case of learn it once and that's going to serve you for the next 30 years.
Ronnie's right, Kevin, absolutely. We underscore that. Lifelong learning, relevant skills, but let me come back to the urgency. If the jobs are not there, then all of the skills are not going to provide the opportunities that they're demanding. And that was the spark in Tunisia. You have quite an educated young group of people in Tunisia. The education system's actually, very, very sound, although we want to see more people obviously transferred through that system. But they can't get jobs. So unless the world puts its head together, unless all of Ronnie's companies with our support say we're going to actually find the job base for young people, then frankly we're going to have a social and an economic situation none of us want.
In closing, I'd like to have you give us some of your ideas about innovations that can actually have an impact. Since it is the nature of business is changing today. You have digital entrepreneurs, industries that didn't exist 10, 20 years ago. What is encouraging you, and what would you have to say to our viewers around the world?
Well, to put that question in context, I want to go back to what Sharan just said. She's absolutely right that what we're talking about fundamentally is jobs, not just jobs for young people. We're talking about economic growth, economic prosperity. There won't be jobs for young people unless there are jobs. Having said that, the second important point, I think, is that there is no panacea. The situation in Tunisia, the situation in South Africa, the situation in Spain, here in the United States, these are very different. And so, to get to your question, I think the answer is partnerships, and dialogue and action at the local level. If I look at what some of my member companies are doing, it's engaging in their communities, engaging with the school systems, engaging with the workers, engaging with NGOs to figure out how in a local setting they can help not just provide opportunities for young people, work with small and medium enterprises, which after all is where the bulk of employment is. It's not working for multinationals. It's those kinds of local initiatives and local problem solving that I think is going to make a difference.
We know the Global Jobs Pact, which is an agreement between workers, governments and employers at the ILO. It says there are some fundamentals. First of all, you need social protection. You need a minimum wage on which people can live. We're not opposed to subsidised wage is where it's about training and it's about apprenticeships, about all those things that guarantee long-term job. But the exploitation of young people is now serious. We need to be able to bargain for a fair share so that you create demand, a better distribution of wages. But we need to grow jobs. We need to invest in the sectors and the enterprises that Ronnie talks about. And frankly, the informal economy is an area where the employers and the workers agree that if you can unleash the creative talent that is absolutely trapped in women and young people in the informal sector, you will generate those sustainable businesses. But the business base has to be there, the rights for workers have to be there, and we will determinedly work together through the ILO to try and see that you generate jobs, they're decent work, and sustainable business result at the end of it all, which is about the global economy we want to see.
Ronnie, Sharan, thank you very much for being here today and sharing your insights. And I wanted to say that the impression that I get from this is that it is in the interest both of business and of the workers' organizations to work together to find the solutions, to make these connections happen, and to really create new opportunities, to create new jobs that can actually move forward the economic and social development of the world today. We'd like to take a very short break right now. We're going to show you a video. We'll be coming back and we'll be talking to our next guests about inspiring and educating youth in the workplace today. We'll be right back. Thank you.